Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 3 weeks to, 4 weeks to Pesach. So after Purim, we go to Wednesday night, we have the Pesach classes. So what we usually do, the first week, we learn how to get the house ready for Pesach. Second week, if I have the booklets already, we'll be able to do products. And the third week, we do the class of all the halachic obligations of the Seder and the obligations, during the Yom Tov of Pesach. So let's begin with getting the house ready for Pesach. So I want to mention a number of things. When it comes to Pesach, there is no limit to the observances and strictness that a person could have during Pesach. Now, Rizal writes that the person who's most meticulous about even a drop of chametz in Pesach is guaranteed not to sin during the year. So there are many chumras. So there's like this. There's halacha, what halacha says you need to do. And then you have chumras where people are stricter. Halacha is halacha. Halacha has to be kept. Chumras, the strict observances of Pesach, have to be done in a way that the husband and wife are on the same page, number one. And it's done in a way that nobody hates Pesach because of everybody going crazy. In fact, it says in Sfarim that when it comes to Pesach, people have to be extremely careful when it comes to anger, because Pesach, time before Pesach, everybody's nervous, everybody's crazy, and you're more prone to anger. So you have to be very careful with not getting angry. But what halacha is halacha, and what chumris, strictness is, again, you have to speak to a mashpia, speak to a rav. The main thing, the husband and wife should be on the same page. The second thing I want to mention is that people sometimes deal with things that are not that important. They go crazy with it, and things that are really important, they ignore. And I'll give you a few examples that soon. So dirt is not chametz, okay? You have to make sure there's no chametz in your house. Dirt is not chametz, okay? So again, you don't have to do spring cleaning if there's a place where there's no chametz. So then there's no chametz. Then you don't have to go crazy doing it. I'll give you an example. Halachically, you have to vacuum your carpet very well, okay? Halachically, because you have crumbs all over the place during the year. That doesn't mean you have a halachic obligation to wash your carpet. I mean, people do it. It's nice. Things that are the closets that you never bring chametz into. It's nice to do spring cleaning there. But there are more important things to deal with than a closet of two adults, that there's nowhere adults where kids don't bring in chametz into the closets during the year. So the focus shouldn't be on the closets. The focus should be on places where chametz is done. Now, I want to go through the kitchen, okay? And we're going to discuss what halacha is and what needs to be done and how to kosher certain utensils and the concept of koshering, which I don't want to elaborate on because we won't have enough time to get into the practical things. When it comes to Pesach, if you have a pot that you cooked chametz in during the year, or you have an oven that you baked chametz in during the year, or you have a stovetop that you cooked chametz during the year. So we know, according to halacha, that if I take a brand new pot and cook chicken soup in that pot, even if I wash out the pot, spotlessly clean, it's still a meat pot. Why is it a fleishik meat pot? Because the taste of meat has been absorbed within the walls of the pot. Then if I'm going to take the same pot and cook dairy in it, so then the meat in the walls of the pot comes out and it mixes with the dairy, and I'm going to have a tray utensil and tray food. So the concept of koshering basically is to remove what's absorbed within the walls of the utensil. That's number one. Number two, the rule is the way it goes in is the way it goes out. That means if it goes in with hot water, it goes out with hot water. If it goes in with direct fire, it has to go out with direct fire. The same way the absorption went in, that's the way it goes out. Another thing we need to keep in mind, that is those things, there's certain materials that are not kosherable. If the materials are not kosherable, then you can't kosher them. Okay? So for instance, earthenware, porcelain, enamel, as far as we're concerned, Ashkenazim, glass, all those things are not kasherable, especially not for Pesach. So people have to have in mind that if you have an enamel sink, let's say a porcelain sink, that sink cannot be kashered for Pesach because porcelain is, for Pesach at least, not a kasherable material. And we're going to go through the kitchen. We're going to discuss things that could be kashered, how to kasher them, and so on. I strongly suggest that pots, pans, or cutlery or things like that that you're planning to kasher for Pesach, do not do it yourself. You should bring it. They have in La Brea, there's on Pico. There are places that actually have a kashering day. You bring them the stuff and they kasher things to you properly. They have the proper utensils, the proper fires, the proper things, and you do it with them. So I'm not going to go into the details how to kasher pots, pans, and bechers and cutlery and all that, unless it's someone going to call me later. But ideally, those things you should do in a place where they do it properly. Okay, where they know what they're doing and they do it and they have the utensils and equipment for it. Now, again, things that only became chametzik through cold, you don't have to kosher with heat because it never became absorbed, generally speaking, as a rule, it never became absorbed within the walls of the utensil. Unless if it was in there for 24 hours. That means if you have a pan, a bowl, a pan, and cold milk sat in there for 24 hours, that means not less than 20, not 23 hours and 59 minutes, 24 hours or more, it's like it was cooked in it. So if you have, let's say, a bowl or a pan that somebody just put milk into and let it sit in the refrigerator for 24 hours, you can't, it needs to be kashered with heat, and the bowl might not be a kasherable material. So we're going to go through all these things. So let's go through the kitchen. We're going to go through the easier parts of the kitchen first, and then we're going to go through the dinim. I just want to mention one more thing, by the way. There's different ways of kashering things. The one way is what's called hagala. Hagala means the purging process. You put the cutlery into bubbling, boiling hot water, and that kashers it, okay? That is called hagala. There's another way of kashering, which is called libun. Libun is with direct fire. It became treif with direct fire. You have to kosher it with direct fire. But I need to explain, and this is a very important concept to understand. When you kosher something with hot water, what it does is it removes the absorption into the water that you're koshering with. Okay, it's removing the absorption into the water that you're koshering it with. When you once you do libun, when you burn it out, it doesn't spit it out into the water. It destroys it in the pan. It destroys it in the material itself. And there's a lot of differences in halacha. If you have to wait 24 hours before you want to kasher something with hagala, before you want to kasher something, the general rule, if you want to kasher something with boiling hot water, it has to be spotlessly cleaned, and you have to wait 24 hours before you kosher. Which means if you have a stainless steel sink, which is a kasherable material, and you want to kasher that for Pesach by using hot water that we'll discuss soon how to do it, you have to make sure that that sink was not used for 24 hours. If it was used within 24 hours, I'm getting practical now, you can't kasher. You could, there's a way of doing it, but practically speaking, you can't kasher it. You have to wait for 24 hours. If I'm going to blowtorch something or self-clean my oven, self-clean my oven, which is direct heat, I don't need to wait 24 hours. Okay, again, if we have time, I'll explain the difference between them. But the bottom line is, something you want to kosher with boiling hot water, you have to wait 24 hours, and it has to be spotlessly clean. You need to wait 24 hours before you kosher it. If you're doing it with direct fire, like blowtorch or self-cleaning oven that gets to 900 degrees, then you don't have to wait 24 hours. Okay, now let's go just quickly through the kitchen and discuss, just go through the practical cases of the kitchen. So we're going to start with the easier ones and get to the harder ones. Okay, so let's say you have a cabinet that where you kept your dishes, the cabinet in the kitchen where you keep your dishes. You don't put food in there. So obviously there's no chametz in there. So now you want to take out your chametz dishes and put in, let's say, your Pesach dishes. Halachically, all you need to do is take out your chametz dishes, wipe it down, because there's never chametz there. Definitely no hot chametz. You wipe it down, and then you put in your chametz, your Pesach dishes. If you have a pantry that has chametz in it, so obviously then you have to clean it out better, because you can have noodle spaghetti that sometimes, the backs tear a little bit. You can have crumbs all over the place. Then if you want to use that for Pesach, obviously you have to clean it better and make sure there's no crumbs or anything of chametz before you put in your Pesach food in there. Now, we're talking about the kitchen today. So the kitchen table. Now, your kitchen table has been used with chametz, obviously, during the year. So therefore, there's inevitably that hot chametz spilled on the table. There's no question that hot chametz spilled on that kitchen table. Now, depending what type of material the table is. Now, wood that doesn't have cracks and crevices in it technically is a kasher material. You can pour boiling hot water over your wooden table, and that would kasher it. If you have cracks, crevices, just different boards that come in and out, so there's areas where there's crumbs. So ideally, what you need to do is clean out the table very well. You don't want to necessarily kasher your table because you might ruin it with boiling hot water. So you have to cover the table very well. Make sure it's covered. You can use vinyl, you can use linoleum, you can use something stronger than just aluminum foil, because aluminum foil, you're going to put something down, it's going to rip. So you have to cover the tables. You could put a plastic with a few levels of tablecloth. Bottom line is you need to cover the kitchen table, the dining room table, where you eat. It needs to be cleaned off well. If you have kitchen chairs, dining room chairs, depending, what type of chairs they are, some have more crumbs, some could hold less crumbs, whatever. But the bottom line is they need to be clean. You don't need to kasher them, because I hope nobody ever poured hot chametz down on the chairs. If you do, you probably need new chairs anyway by then. So the chairs you clean off, the table you clean off. The table should be covered for Pesach. Your refrigerator and freezer. Granted, they're cold, so you don't have to kosher your refrigerator or freezer. But because there is chametz there a whole year, you have to clean out the refrigerator spotlessly. You have to take out the shelves, wash them off, wash down the walls, wash down the surfaces, because as everybody knows, things do spill in the refrigerator. And it's cold, granted, but you still have to clean it out very well. Some people are strict that they actually line the shelves. You actually line the shelves with, now they sell special shelf liners. You can cut it to size, you line the shelves. Halachically, is it mandatory? No. If you clean off the shelf, well, but again, people are machmir in many places that they will line the shelves to make sure that there's no chametz there left there. But again, halachically, if you just clean out the fridge and freezer, it's okay. You have to be careful, like in the door, in the what's it called? The rubber there. No, help me, somebody. The
lining.
Steel.
No, it slipped my mind.
The gasket.
It's the lining.
The gasket.
The gasket, that's it. The gasket, thank you. The gasket needs to be cleaned out well because there's a lot of crumbs in there. You'll open it up, you'll see. You have to take Q-tips and actually clean it out because there is real chametz there that you don't want. You have to be very careful with that. And you have to clean that out very, very well. You don't have to pour hot water down there. You don't have, because now what happens if there's places in the freezer, let's say, in certain freezers, you can have like holes that you can't get into to clean it out. But there might be crumbs in there, but you can't clean it out. It's just impossible. It's too small to get something in there to clean it out. So then what the proper thing to do is not a lot, but you take a little like bleach and just pour a little bit of bleach down there that's going to ruin any food that's there is going to be disintegrated and it's going to be not edible for dogs. So you do that, or pour some Windex or some detergent down there where you can't reach, and that will take care of it to like ruin it, and then it's not edible for dogs, and then it's not really called chametz. So that's the refrigerator and freezer. Now, what happens if you have, let's moving on to the kitchen. What do you do with your countertops? You can kasher your glass kitchen, though we don't kasher. Ashkenazim don't kasher glass for Pesach. So therefore, what you have to do with the glass tabletops is you have to clean it off well and cover it with whatever. Best thing to use is something like a vinyl or something like that, because then even if something spills, it's not going to go through. So that's just a practical thing that you can cover with cardboard. You can, whatever you want to cover it with, it should be covered. Now, what do you do with your countertops? Now, you have different types of countertops. Now, certain materials are kasherable, certain materials are not kasherable. We mentioned before. For instance, I'm talking now for Pesach. Formica is not kasherable for Pesach. Plastic is not kasherable for Pesach. Granite composite. Now, there's two types of granite. There's granite, slabs of granite that you have a countertop with that. Granite is a natural stone. It's kasherable. But if it's granite composite, which means, by the way, by definition, they grind up granite and then they mix cement into it, and they form it into a beautiful countertop. Okay, there's certain countertops that are called granite composite. That, because cement is earthenware, cement is not kasher. So you can't kasher a granite composite countertop. If it's a plain slab of granite or marble or quartzite, there's a difference between quartz and quartzite. Quartz, we don't kasher quartz for Pesach. You're probably also not. Quartzite is a natural stone. Quartz isn't a natural stone, it's a composite. Quartzite is a kasherable material. So what happens if you have a counter of granite, marble, again, not a composite, granite, marble, quartzite or something like that, or metal, stainless steel. You can have a commercial kitchen, stainless steel. So then what you need to do is make sure it's 100% clean. Then you have to make sure that no heat was used for 24 hours. If it wasn't used for hot, if it was used for hot, you can't kasher with boiling hot water. Then you pour I'm doing a lenient opinion now. You can pour boiling hot water all over the countertop. And that, in essence, kashers it. Now, some people are even more machmer after they do that, or instead of doing that, they'll cover the whole granite top. They can get a special Pesach, thin piece of material, not material, actually stone of some sort that covers it, or they cover it with cardboard and aluminum foil with tablecloths or coverings over whatever. But those materials are kasherable, and you can kasher it by pouring boiling hot water all over the countertop. Your floors are going to get wet, but so what? If it's formica, quartz, non-kasherable materials, the only thing you could do, you have to cover the countertop, and you have to make sure that nothing hot goes onto the countertop during Pesach. You make sure you put down a pot. It cannot be directly on the formica, on the granite, on the quartz, and things like that, because it's not kasherable, and the heat is going to make a problem. So you have to make sure, again, if the countertop, some people just cover them, they don't bother kashering them. If you cover them with a thick covering that doesn't rip when you put something down, it's fine. It's like a new countertop, and you don't have to do anything about it. Now, what happens if you have, let's say, your sink? Okay. So first of all, today in the stores, they have sink inserts of different sizes of sink. They have them in LA. You have sink inserts. You can buy those, but if not, let's say you have a stainless steel sink. So what you need to do is make sure it's spotlessly cleaned. And again, nothing hot was used in the sink for 24 hours. Now, as I mentioned every year, there's two things that are problems in the kitchen. Three big problems in the kitchen. One is called the husband, one is called the kids, and one is called the housekeeper. Because none of the above mentioned understand when you tell them something in the kitchen. So therefore, if you're going to tell your husband or kid or housekeeper, do me a favor, no hot water in the sink, forget it. They're going to pour the hot coffee down there, and they're going to use the hot water. So what you do is, it's a practical piece of advice, underneath the sink, there's a knob that you can close the hot water. You close the hot water and cover the sink with something that nobody forgets to dump their coffee or the hot water or whatever it is. So just a practical way, if you could do it like over Shabbos, you're not using your sink that much, right? So therefore you do it over Shabbos. You have 24 hours where you can't use hot water anyway, basically. Just make sure you don't dump anything hot down the sink. Now I'm talking halacha now, not chumras. Halachically, if the stainless steel sink was not used for 24 hours, you can pour hot water all over the sink from a kettle. But boiling has to be boiling hot water. Some people even use a hot rock or a hot iron, which is unplugged, and they pour it over the sink to make sure the sink is. Again, halachically, if you do it just pouring hot water all over the sink, it's good. Some people are machmir, they'll use a hot rock or a hot stone or something like that. But you have to keep in mind as follows. When it comes to the faucets, okay? Now, years ago, as we all know, life was simpler. They had simple faucets, metal, simple faucets, no extensions and no this and that and gadgets galore. A lot of the sink faucets today, just for the record, are actually plastic that looks like metal, but it's not metal, it's plastic. And plastic is not kasherable for Pesach. So therefore, if you have a faucet that's plastic, you can't kasher it. What do you need to do? What you need to do is pour boiling hot water all over it anyway. But again, that's not really sufficient. So then you need to cover the whole faucet, either with aluminum foil, or what's a very good thing to use and very practical and very simple, you get cheesecloth, because cheesecloth does let the water go through. And you cover the whole faucet with cheesecloth, and then you put a rubber band every so often that it should hold in place. So then it's covered. If it's covered, it's fine. So then you're not going to have a problem. If it's stainless steel faucet, but again, they have these things today you pull out, and they have that whole thing that you really can't kasher that inside area. So if you're going to be using that sink on Pesach, you really need to make sure that you're not going to be pulling out, the sink faucet thing that goes all around the place. You really shouldn't use that on Pesach. That part of it. You can use the faucet, but you should not use, because that's very difficult to kasher, because it's impossible to clean, and it's very difficult to kasher. Okay, that is as far as the sink goes. If you don't have a stainless steel sink, you must get inserts, because otherwise the enamel sink, the porcelain sink is not kasherable, and it's chametz. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to have to get inserts somehow. Now, if you can't get inserts, let's say you live in a place where there's no inserts, you could buy the Rubbermaid tubs, okay? And you could put, the Rubbermaid also has that little small tray at the bottom that you could put, and then dishes rest on top of it, but you put the tub on top of it. If you're ambitious, you can buy a regular tub, Rubbermaid tub that fits into the sinks, and with the drill, you can make holes in it. You have a drill and you know how to do it. You can make holes in it. It's not so easy, by the way. And then, again, you can have it's like a new sink with, holes that's letting the water out. But the sink is a very big problem. It's a very big problem because it's real chametz. Now, dishwashers, I'm getting into practical halacha now. Dishwashers are not kasherable for Pesach, period. Microwaves are not kasherable for Pesach, period. Okay? What you might read in a book, it's not true. You can't kasher microwaves for Pesach. You can't boiling water on the sink one time or more to kasher, as long as every area of the sink is covered with the hot water, it's good enough. Some people will use a hot stone together with it. But again, I'm not talking about chumash now, I'm talking about cold-blooded halacha. So you can't kasher dishwashers, you can't kasher microwaves. And by the way, I mention every year, as you keep making Pesach, every year you add to your collection. 1 year you buy a microwave, 1 year you buy a blender, 1 year you buy this, that after a few years you'll have a whole Pesach kitchen. You're not going to have to kasher cutlery and pots and pans and things like that, because you have everything set. Now, when it comes to the oven, okay, now you have the oven, just for definition. Oven is the inside where you bake. Stovetop is the stovetop. Now, the oven, if you have a self-cleaning oven, okay, you self-clean it for a minimum of 3 hours. But again, let me just say another thing. Lately, the newer model ovens that say self-cleaning, it's called Aqualift, not the name of the oven. The process of self-cleaning is called Aqualift. That is not a self-cleaning oven halachically. Self-cleaning oven, the good old-fashioned self-cleaning ovens that we all grew up with, so to speak, get up to 900 degrees. That's the heat of a self-cleaning oven. 900 degrees is considered libun gomor. It's like blowtorching it until it gets red hot. That's how it cleans it, with that tremendous heat. So if you have a self-cleaning oven, that what you need to do is very simple. Put the racks in the leave the racks in the self-cleaning oven. They tell you not to because it gets discolored if you do it many times. Put the racks inside the self-cleaning oven. If you have gas grates on the stove top, gas stainless, put them into the self-cleaning oven also. Because then, and you turn on the self-cleaning oven for 3 hours, that kashers the self-cleaning oven. Ideally, and this is pretty important, the door of the self-cleaning oven does not get to 900 degrees. It gets much, much less. So therefore, the inside of the oven door does not become kashered at 900 degrees. So therefore, what you need to do, if you have a self-cleaning oven, but then you need to take aluminum foil and line the whole inside of the door completely lining the inside of the door. And what you do it in a way is that you wrap it around on the outside, because otherwise, if you just line the inside of the door and you close the oven, the aluminum foil will come off. So what you need to do is line the inside of the door and fold it so that it's able to close, and you line it put the aluminum foil on the outside of the oven door, tape it down, and then it's going to hold. That even when you open and close the oven door, it's going to close, and you won't. And if it gets messed up, you just redo it in the middle of Pesach. You just redo it again. So that's as far as ovens go. If you don't have a self-cleaning oven, it's a problem. But I'm going now with the lenient opinion. According to many opinions, if the oven is spotlessly clean, that means, if you have a gas oven, there's a shelf at the bottom that when you take it out, that's where the fire is. You open that up, you'll see a lot of dirt down there. You have to actually, with a flashlight, take and make sure the oven is 100% clean. Make sure it's 100% clean. Then, after the oven is 100% clean, you turn on the oven to the highest, which is broil, 550 degrees, for over an hour, leaving the racks inside the oven. Now, if you're able to blowtorch the racks, that's even better. If you're able to have a friend that's self-cleaning their oven and your racks fit into their self-cleaning oven, put them into their self-cleaning oven, or kasher it also 100%. But if you don't have a self-cleaning oven, I would suggest that after you leave the racks in there, you should cover the racks with a few layers of heavy-duty aluminum foil, make holes in it for the air to circulate. And that's even better because then the pans are not touching the actual grates, which are chametz. So you're touching, and if possible, you should try to make sure that the pans don't touch the walls of the oven. If you could do it, it's better. Make sure it doesn't touch the walls of the oven because you didn't really kasher it properly with a liban gamur, with a complete burning out. That's as far as the oven goes. Now, what happens if you have a glass top? It's very popular now, the glass stove tops. Those are halachic disasters year-round, kashering-wise, because it's glass and the fire, it doesn't go all over, the pot extends beyond the fire. They have now, I was told, and I heard people use it. There's a company that's called Lomi, Lomi. If you go online, you'll see it. They sell, actually, it's a company. I didn't even know if it's a Jewish company. They sell material that covers your glass top oven, a stove top, the glass stove top, and you're able to cook on it. You can put your pots and pans directly on that Lomi covering, and it still cooks. So that would be a very good option for people if they have a glass top oven, because the kasher that for Pesach is halachically very, very complicated. Complicated the whole year, but especially for Pesach. It's very, very difficult to kasher them. So that's as far as the ovens go. So we covered the ovens, we covered the sinks, we covered the house, basically the tables, the chairs, the cabinets, the countertops, and things like that. Now, which is a very important thing to spend time on, unless you want to hire somebody to do it, which is probably easier and more practical. If you have a car and you're blessed with children and you're blessed with the heavenly task of doing carpool, that is, parents, thank God I don't do it anymore, but I did it. There's something called carpool, when you take your kids to school and you pick them up from school. And there seems to be a law somewhere, I don't know where, that kids have to eat in the car and leave over crumbs more than you can imagine. And not only do they leave crumbs on the floor, behind the seat, under the seat, in the middle of the seat. Stick your hand, if you do carpool with kids, stick your hand in between, the seats, you'll see. And over there, it's possible you'll even have a kazayas of chametz, which is biblically forbidden. So if you want to talk about not a chumrah, halacha that people should be very careful about, that is the cars need to, I'm not saying you should do it, but if you can have somebody detail not the outside of the car, you don't need the outside of the car detail. There's no chametz there. But if you can get somebody to come and detail your car, they take out the seats and they clean it properly and it's done, fantastic. That's the way to go. Unless you want to spend hours because it's going to take hours doing it. And don't give the job to your kids to do. They'll be done in 5 minutes. And it's probably worse than before it started. So the car is a very important thing. You need also just a few reminders about different things. You have your blech, that you use for Shabbos to cover the fire, the blech. You can't use that blech during the year's chametz stick. Things spill on it. It's real chametz with direct heat. So you need to get a separate blech for Pesach and keep it from year to year that you need. Another thing you need to keep in mind is that the vacuum cleaner bags that you vacuum with, so if it's even if it's bagless, what they call it, the machine, if you're planning to use it during Pesach. Now, if you don't want to use it, you want to sell it with your chametz, you can put it away. You don't have to bother cleaning it. You can just put it away. If you're planning to use the vacuum cleaner during Pesach, because there's a lot of matzah crumbs all over the place, obviously, if you can't do the then the vacuum cleaner must be made spotlessly clean. That's real chametz in there. So if it's bagless, you have to make sure the whole machinery is clean. If it's with a bag, you have to make sure to empty the vacuum cleaner bag. The last time you vacuum before Pesach, when it's still chametz around the house, throw it out into the garbage and then put in a new bag. But the machine has to be clean. The very important thing, vacuum cleaners are something which is very chametzdik. Now, I want to mention one more thing before we discuss the garbage cans, which is a very important thing. Women who cook with their rings on, or they make challah or bread or challah wearing their rings, so those rings have chametz in it, and there's no question that hot chametz touched it. So I'm not going to tell you to kasher your rings. It might loosen the setting of the diamond, whatever. But if it's a simple ring, you can put into boiling hot water. But I would suggest that if you don't want to kasher your rings, you should not wear your rings while you're preparing food. on Pesach. Okay, you can wear the rings, but not while you're preparing food in the kitchen because the rings might be chametz stick. And a chametz on Pesach, even one drop is never nullified. So you just keep in mind the rings that you're not kashering or whatever, or get special rings for Pesach, special diamond ring for Pesach, and they keep it from year to year if your husband's willing to do it. So then don't wear the rings while you're preparing food. Concerning the garbage cans, it is a big issue. And I'll explain to you why it's an issue. The garbage cans, it depends if the city owns them or if you own them. It's a big halachic difference. If the city owns the garbage can and you throw chametz into the garbage can, you're making it free for all, and the container is not yours, so it's not your chametz. But if you own the garbage cans, they're yours. And if you put chametz in your garbage can, let's say this year Pesach is Tuesday and Wednesday. So let's say your pickup is Tuesday, but Tuesday's after the time when you're not allowed to have chametz. So you can't put out your garbage Sunday, Monday before, and if you rent the garbage cans from the city, I know in Beverly Hills, the city owns them. In LA, you have to find out, and I'll tell you halachically what the difference is. If they get stolen, you are responsible for them, they're yours. If they get stolen and the city replaces them for free, then they're not yours. If you're responsible for the garbage cans, halachically, they're considered yours. It doesn't matter, you're renting them, not renting them, they're your responsibility. That's called ownership. So then you have another issue. If you want to use your garbage can during Pesach, you have to clean out the garbage can. Even though you put your garbage in bags, but as everybody knows, bags rip and so on and so forth. So you have to make sure that garbage cans are clean. In Beverly, or what I tell people to do is very simple. Before the week before Pesach, after the last pickup, after the last pickup before Pesach, separate your garbage. Things that are not chametz stick, real chametz, you can throw into the garbage. It doesn't matter. But things that are real chametz, put into a separate garbage bag and dump it in a city garbage can somewhere. Then it's not yours. The bag is not yours. Then it's not an issue. But if the container is yours and you're going to put your garbage in your container, it's considered your chametz in your domain, and there's an issue with it. So you just have to be aware of those issues. Now, I just want to mention, by the way, kids' high chairs need to be cleaned off because there's chametz all over the place. Another interest, I'm just going through practical things. According to halacha, your tablecloths that you use during the year, chametz stick a tablecloth. So if you put a plastic over it during the year, they're not really chametz. But halachically, if you take the tablecloths that you use during the year and you wash them in a hot water cycle, and then when you take it out, you check and make sure there's no dirt, no residue of any dirt, or you're allowed to use it on Pesach. Especially if many people, put plastic over it, then for sure there's not an issue. Okay? The same thing with dish towels that you dry your chametz stick dishes. According to halacha, if you wash them in a hot cycle and you dry them, halachically, you can use them on Pesach. The custom is people have separate, you buy them once, you have separate dish towels for Pesach, and these are Pesach dish towels. But technically what happens if you don't have, halachically, you're allowed to wash your dish towels in the washing machine in a hot cycle, and then that's fine also. You don't have to do anything. Okay, sinks, we did dishwashers, we discussed. The bathroom sinks, by the way, you don't have to kasher. Generally speaking, you don't put hot water down the bathroom sink. Well, you're not going to use it with hot water. I just want to mention just the practical level of kashering with hot water. And again, I strongly suggest if you're going to kasher cutlery or kiddush cups or whatever, you should bring it to the places that have the community service. There's one on Pico, and there's one Beth Jacob has. I know Bais Yehuda has next to the congregation Levi Yitzchak. Over there they have, and you have to find out which days they do it, and bring it to them, and you have to make sure it's spotlessly clean. And then they kasher it for you, which is much easier. But what happens if you want to kasher, let's say your sink, you want to kasher your countertops, or you do want to kasher something? Do you use a Pesach dika pot, or do you use a chametz dika pot? What do you use to kasher? I'm sorry, I'm going to stop a minute. I just reminded myself what I wanted to say before, and I didn't. The Shabbos candles that you leave on the table a whole year, okay, that you leave on the table a whole year, you don't have to kasher them. You have to clean them well. And the custom is that you don't put them direct, even if you have let's say you put them on a tray, but you don't put the tray directly on the table. You put something underneath the tray that it shouldn't be directly on the table. Again, it's not really chametz, but it was around chametz during the year. So the custom is you put something under the tray or under the licht, and that you make sure it doesn't touch the table. Now, what pot do you use to kosher? Now you can do two things. You can either use a Pesach dika pot that you kosher when you finish using it, or you can use a chametz dika pot. Now, remember we said before, anything that you want to kosher for Pesach must be spotlessly cleaned. Something that cannot be cleaned, like a strainer, a grater, halachic says you can't kosher them because they cannot be cleaned. Even they write a kiddush cup, let's say, that has a very tight lip around the top, that is very hard to clean out, you shouldn't kasher that for Pesach. Again, Pesach is very, very strict because it's not like during the year when things become nullified 1 in 60. It doesn't become nullified, period. So you could do a thing like this. You could take a chametz dika pot or a kettle that wasn't used for 24 hours. Okay, to put it away, make sure it wasn't used for 24 hours. You fill it to the top with water and you bring it to a bubbling boil. Bubbling boil means it's bubbling. According to many opinions, you have to put like something hot in it that the water should overflow and cover the sides of the pot. Now, and then you take this pot and you rinse it under cold water. Now this pot is ready for kashering. So now you fill it up again, empty out the water, you fill it up again 3/4 of the way, half a way, depending on what you want to do. And then you bring the water to a bubbling boil, rapid boil, and then you put in the things one at a time, and you leave it in there for 10 seconds, and you take it out and you rinse it under cold water. Now, whatever you're going to kasher with Hagala, remember, we said you cannot use it for hot for 24 hours. Something you're going to kasher with libun, which is red hot, or what's called libun kal, that you like blowtorch it, you get it hot enough that if you would touch the other side of it, you'd burn your hand. That already, according to the Alter Rebbe, you don't need to wait 24 hours to do that. Hagala, though, anytime you're kashering with boiling hot water, you need to wait 24 hours. This pot that you want to use to kosher, you have to wait 24, clean it, wait 24 hours, fill it up with water, bubbling boil, then you could put the things in that you want to kasher. Now, what you need to keep in mind, according to the laws of physics and reality, if the water is boiling, bubbling boil, and you put in a few cutleries, the water cools down. So then you'd have to wait until the water reboils. Now, when you put it in, you have to make sure two things are not touching each other, because that area between the two places is not going to be kasher. You have to put in like one at a time, two at a time, and make sure that the water gets all over the place. Halachically, you can kasher even something half at a time. Mikveh, you can't. But let's say you have a big pot. You don't have a big pot for this pot to go into, but it can only go in like half at a time. You can kasher half of a pot in boiling hot water, rinse it out under cold water, and then do the other half. But again, the water has to be continuously boiling. That's the way to kasher it. Now the custom is, even though halacha says seemingly there's no reason for it, but halacha, the Alter Rebbe says minig Yisrael Teirehi. It's a minig that when you kasher with water, when you finish kashering it with hot water, you rinse it under cold water, and that's to make sure nothing goes back into the pot. When you kosher with libun, like we said, the blowtorch or the self-cleaning oven, the start AccuLift process. By the way, AccuLift, if I'm not mistaken, only gets up to 250 degrees. And the way it self-cleans it is they have a chemical that works with that degree of heat, and it cleans the oven like a 900-degree oven. But the bottom line is, it's not halachically 900. So that has a din of a regular oven that you would have to do it. Now, people that have braces, a lot of people have braces, kids have braces, adults have braces. You should try to get them cleaned before Pesach, if possible, because, particles get stuck in the braces, and those particles could be chametz. So what do you do if you have braces? You try to clean them out, and you, preferably for 24 hours before Pesach, don't eat anything that's hot or drink anything hot. Warm, yes. You try not to drink or eat something which is very hot. Okay, and then before Pesach, you rinse your mouth while it's still, you can still use it in the morning, Erev Pesach, early in the morning. You can rinse your mouth with hot water as much as you can handle, not burn yourself, God forbid. But, water that you can handle, and rinse your mouth thoroughly with it. And again, the way it went in, that's the way it comes out. And you can use your braces on Pesach. I mean, you can eat food on Pesach. There are people that are machmir because they have braces, and braces is metal. And if you ate something hot during the year, it absorbed within it, and then it's going to come out when you eat them. So there are people, and this is a chumrah that some people do. If they have braces, they will not eat anything very hot on Pesach, or for that matter, very sharp either. They just won't eat very hot stuff because, again, the braces are metal, they absorb chametz, and if you eat something very hot, it's going to come out. So again, it's a chumrah. It's not something that has to be done, but there are people that do it. Okay, now I'm just looking what else did I need to mention. Okay, again, blenders, all those things, if you want to kasher them, they should be kashered in a proper place. Just trying to think. Let me look at some of the questions that it didn't have an answer, didn't have a chance to answer. Okay, trash can belongs to the city as usual in LA. Can we put chametz in them? The city of LA is questionable. I don't think it necessarily works like that. Can we put pots in there as well to kosher them if the oven is koshering? If you want to do that with a self-cleaning cycle, you have to be very careful, because if you have plastic handles, it's going to melt. Okay? Now, if you're doing it the koshering method that you don't have a self-cleaning oven, you're koshering it with, turning it on to the highest, then you could put your pans in there. That's called libun kal. You could kasher your pans that way, instead of doing it with hot water. But again, you just want to make sure they're not going to melt. You can't put an aluminum pan into a 550-degree oven. It will probably melt. Definitely not into a self-cleaning oven. 1 second. Can I caution? Okay, what about, why isn't it, 1 second. I'm going to say, okay. I don't see. I'm going to say pots and pans. Okay, I think I covered the questions. Oh, if I only cover the countertop, I can't put hot pots addition. Yes, you could. If you cover I said if you don't kasher it, you have to make sure that you don't put in. But if you cover, okay, you're right. I should have mentioned this clearly. I've been clear about it. If you cover your countertops, you're not kashering it, but you want to cover it properly, then the din is you could put hot. You just want to make sure it's not going to melt anything. Okay? If you put a cover with plastic and you're going to put down a hot pot, it's going to melt. But if you have a covering that you're able to put down hot pots, there's no problem with it. A covered sink, a covered countertop is like a new sink and a new countertop. So then that wouldn't be a problem at all. To blowtorch a granite countertop, halachically you could, but is it going to kill it? I don't know. I am definitely not taking responsibility to tell you, yeah, it's good, do it. Halachically, it's good, but I can't tell you if it's going to. We need to cover the shelves and the wall of the fridge. I mentioned that before. Halachically, if you clean it out well, you don't need to. Many people are machmir to cover the shelves. Some people are even machmir to cover the walls. You know what? A lot of it depends how you use the fridge during the year. You know, if the walls get very dirty during the year, then yes, you should line the walls also. But again, most people, halachically, I'm saying, most people hold that if you just clean out the shelves well, you don't have to cover it. In our circles, most people try to line the shelves because again, it's all cold, but the question is, are we certain that there's no crumbs left or anything like that left? Again, I'm just looking for the other things. There are convection ovens, by the way. I have a din of a regular oven that you really, if you can not kasher it is better, or at least turn it on to the highest and keep it there for as long as possible. Oh, by the way, anything that has a wooden handle, you can't kasher for Pesach. And the reason for that is because when you have a blade, if it's two pieces, okay, you have a handle and a knife or a fork and a spoon like that. So because it's two pieces, that means one piece goes into the other. There's tiny crevices that dirt might be able to go into, crumbs, and therefore that cannot be kasher for Pesach. Because again, anything that cannot be cleaned cannot be kasher for Pesach. I'll give you an example. You can't cutting board, yeah? Okay, if it's a plastic cutting board, for sure you can't kasher. Even if it's a wooden cutting board. Wood is a kasherable material. The problem is with the cutting board, and we'll understand this, then we'll explain a lot of other cases that we discussed. There's a bunch of there's a whole bunch of cracks and crevices of where you're cutting. Now that area that has the where you cut, that stuff cannot be cleaned. It's impossible to clean it properly. So therefore, if you want to, I'll give you an example halachically, but it's not practical. If you want to kasher a cutting board, a wooden cutting board for Pesach, what you need to do is sand it down, that there's no more cracks, you know, and then after there's no cracks at all from the cutting, then you can put it into boiling hot water and kasher it. But I'll tell you the truth, that sand down a wooden board is not worth the money. It's going to take you longer per hour than it would be to buy a new one. Okay, that's it for today. Mitzvah Shem, next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I hope we're going to do products, because I hope they have the list by then. But it's up to if they get them or not. Don't forget in the immediate near future to sell your chametz. And Mitzvah Shem, next Wednesday at 8 o'clock, we will Mitzvah Shem do products, hopefully.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
All the best, and everybody.
All the best to you.
Good news. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.